Unfortunate. But let's see if I could be here for this performance here. Give it up for Michelle Soto!
I just want to tell you guys, I think this place is really dope.
Yeah!
So I feel like, because I feel like you guys will understand this, and I feel at home here. Sometimes before I perform poetry, I get really nervous, and I get panic attacks. And the only thing that really calms me down is if I can recite my poem. And if, you know, I feel like once I get into it, that's when I feel like, all right, I'm good, I'm set. And I think that, you know, talking about anxiety is really important in these spaces. So,
Going, girl. I mean, let's go.
So, I just wanted to be honest with you because all of y'all have been honest in this space, and I think it's really dope. And just random shout out to Elizabeth, who just recently performed. So the last poem that you performed at Capicu before this one, I showed the video at our poetry club meeting, and let's just say we know exactly who you are in mask.
Yeah.
Right? It's necessary because I go to an all-women's university, so that shit is real. You know, sexual harassment, dealing with that shit, especially there. So, you know, I just want to thank you, all of y'all, but especially you for existing and spitting poetry. All right. So this poem specifically has to do with me just getting out of a breakup. And I think that something that happened in this relationship happens a lot, and particularly to our women of color in our communities. This idea that if you shine, then you're selfish, then you don't care, then you have to prove that you love someone. And that's bullshit. Because that shit can really break your spirit apart. And it did that to me in the midst of a semester where I had 3 fucking jobs, and I was leading the poetry club, and I was going to conferences, and some motherfucker wanted to tell me I didn't care because I spent too much time with my family, who I saw 3 times out of the fucking year when I come back home. That's bullshit.
Fuck that guy.
So, thank you. But this is just, you know, a poem about our relationship, and just, you know,
Don't date a poet!
you know, just falling in love, and then, you know, dealing with that bullshit and realizing maybe you didn't know that person in the first place. Alright.
Cada vez que pienso en ti, me dolió.
Okay. Heartbreak sounds like 1. The first time we met, I outlined the sharp angles of his jaw with the tips of my fingers. Thought I'd never see him again, so I handed him my teeth and wrote a poem dedicated to the memory of a moment. When we met a second time, I remember trying to pinch myself awake. And when I could still see his face, I knew I couldn't be dreaming, so I let him borrow my heartbeat for the night. Never expected to fall in love, but there we were, encased in stairways to stations, passengers floating around our swapped lips. I named him Magic before I could blink. Composed soliloquies about the way his neck smelled of lavender and sweat, and how his head tilted back and his lashes grazed his cheeks, and his laughter bouncing off of street lamps. I didn't think much about futures. I probably should have. Maybe then I wouldn't be left with these dancing what-ifs and fragments that seep into dreams, but I guess regrets make the best poems, right?
Knowledge!
2.
Wow!
When we were together, I would look into his eyes and see pebbles sinking. Would tell him to be careful of his leaping limbs that would land in a heap in the Upper West Side, but he would still jump in front of rotating tires, and wedge his spine in between closing doors. I knew I couldn't save him. I tried. Anyway, 3. I remember the night he asked me how I felt about him. It was the same night my breath hummed of tequila. I know now he must have not believed me when I was sober. Must have thought I tasted like broken glass. All those migraines must have been my body aching in anticipation for the night he would label me liar for naming him love. I wonder what his face looked like when my heart split open and combusted onto the concrete. When I could no longer recognize that same face I introduced my mother and father to on Cross Bay Boulevard. To those shoulders I shed tears on for 7 fucking months, but I guess he was afraid of the width of my wings. Yes, deep between his thighs he stored a switch he flicked that made my lungs plunge into my kneecaps. I wonder if he remembers that I used to write him sonnets at midnight. That the first poem I memorized was about his eyelids. I want to burn every fucking page doused in his name, but I don't. 4. Hold up. Let me get this straight. He called you selfish because you wanted to spend time with your family on the 6 days out of the year that you're actually in New York? Yo, that motherfucker's a scrub. What you said? You said he works where? On 23rd Street? I'm about to fight his ass. You think I'm lying? Listen, I just fucking switched to Geico. I could run his ass over right now. I don't give a shit. Yo, but you know what you should do? You should write this fire ass poem, right? And then you should title that shit to that fucking cabron who tries to guilt trip me into staying with his ass. You believe that shit? You's a fucking pedazo de mierda. Fucking pendejo, you piece of shit, yo. If you wrote that poem, that shit will be so dope. Seriously though. Don't ever think that I would choose some motherfucker I hardly knew over you. 5. I wonder why he wanted to consume me entirely. Strip me of my body. Fold my limbs into his pocket for safekeeping when I never asked to be swallowed whole. Never said I could become his home. Don't believe in this concept of fixing. No, magic is not meant to work that way. Yet he still expected for me to fit my body into his. To apologize for the thunder that is my tongue. Expected me to squeeze into sunlight until I'm no longer there. But he must have forgotten who he was fucking with, right? Why else would he try to slap box with my spirit when I've got my grandmother ready to hand me a razor blade to cut his fucking throat with? See, this poem might be about him, but don't get it twisted. I wrote this shit for me. Because we all know that breakups can shatter spines, but guess what? I'm still standing, still slaying, still got clapped back for days, still the best thing he will never, ever regain. Such a shame, right? We could have built entire cities with our love, but I don't got time for poison like him. Nah, I ain't about that life.